Let me just put it plain. Fat is not the enemy. We've all been duped. We've all been lied to.
Mia, how did you find carnivore?
Well, good morning from Dublin, Ireland. Um, I'd say it was fury, frustration, um, a bit of desperation, exasperation, loss, grief, sadness, in my personal life, in my relationships. And what else? A fear of suffering for myself because I watched a lot of suffering in those events that I'll get to. And now I work with the elderly in my profession and the very ill, the very infirm. So I'm kind of a frontline worker in that sense with those people. So I really see how much people suffer. Um, and so much of it is down to a term I used to hear a lot, but I'm not sure we use it as much: auto intoxication, bringing disease on ourselves. I grew up in
And,
the West Village of New York City, and my family of origin home was like a war zone. My parents hated each other. uh, and I was very sensitive to it. I was traumatized by that. Um, I was bottle fed, which is something we're starting to talk about more, I think, in the nutrition space. So I would imagine, as Eric Clapton says, that sugar was my gateway drug. Nobody knew. And the only person who I felt close to and safe with was my maternal grandmother. And she happened to be a chain smoker and a sugar addict. And I didn't understand any of that, of course, but she made the best fudge in the world. She made the best cookies. We ate ice cream day and night. Like, kids just were impressionable. We take to it. So I took to sugar. Um, when I was 8 years old, my parents separated. And I thought, oh, well, maybe things will be more peaceful. I literally thought that at 8 years of age, maybe things will be more peaceful, but it wasn't. So I took to the street. I felt like being out there um, was safer than being in my house. And I found cigarettes, alcohol, drugs. I took off like a flash. I started to get in trouble cutting school, getting in trouble with the law. Um, and it escalated. And I was hanging around and running around on the streets day and night with kids just like me who came from these broken alcoholic homes, I suppose. Um, and so I was self medicating. So where I had started with sugar, now I had switched seats on the Titanic to cigarettes, alcohol, drugs. And like I said, I was this anxious, sensitive kid. So it worked. It worked for a long time. And my father actually was quite healthy. He was a marathon runner and he'd done martial arts. And when I was around 10 years of age, he opened a gourmet food store in Gramercy Park, which is a very posh area of New York City. So we were like cheesemongers. It was a tiny shop and we sold all gourmet foods, cheeses from all around the world, charcuterie, pate, all the stuff that carnivores love. Um, and I was eating all that, learning all about all that, but I was also eating all the stuff that kids eat in the 70s and 80s, McDonald's and fast food. And uh, Ken Berry talks about like ho-hos and ding-dongs and, all these crazy packaged disasters of sugar and processed food and chemicals. I ate all of it. And I think I've never had a weight problem. I think it was because I was also smoking and drinking and using drugs and running and, on the streets and uh, going to clubs and staying out all night and dancing. And I just was very hyperactive. I think I was hyperactive. Um, And I started to experience health problems. My parents were very weight conscious, both of them, even though they didn't talk to each other. They were obsessed with their weight, both of them. So that was an impression that was, put upon us, my sister and I both. I'm the youngest of three. And like I remember my parents shaming my sister for being chubby, shaming her. And you didn't see obesity much, uh, but it made an impression on me. Um, my father would run. I think I thought maybe if I run with my father, I'll get his approval and we'll have some way to connect because he was such a difficult man. He was so critical and so impatient. My mother, to be honest, was a party animal. Maybe that's why I became one. She wasn't around. She was out with her friends, drinking and having fun. But again, she'd say things to me like, Mia, will you step on that scale? Because I think it's wrong. I don't think I weigh 105 pounds. I think I weigh 98 pounds. And that was her, her motive was to stay skinny, stay slim. So she destroyed her own health in the end by dieting. And this is, I think, something she got from society. Um, so she drank, but she didn't eat, and she dieted, and she stepped on that scale all the time, which is not a measure of health, of course. So I went off to university for my freshman year, and I gained some weight. And I came back for, say, the summer break, and somebody, a friend, it was a throwaway comment. They meant nothing by it, of course, said something like, wow, you got fat. And I took it the wrong way, probably because of all that low self-esteem, conditioning, trauma, whatever it was, society, the times we were living in. I became a bulimic, kind of at the back of one comment. And I had never had a weight problem. So I became, if you know anything about bulimia or anorexia, because often they blend together, you're restricting a lot of the time. And then when you're eating, you cannot control yourself. And then you're purging, to put it politely. Now, remember, I'm in the food business, right? And I'm working kind of retail hours. It's crazy and it's very fast paced, kind of quick takeaway kind of a situation. And yet I'm binging and purging up to 10 times a day. And I looked at it like a shameful addiction. I was aware that I was in it. I was very ashamed of it. But I also looked at it like a way to control my life. And a therapist later explained to me, actually, it was a way to stuff your anger. So eating a lot of food, I don't know if you've ever done it, Dave, but it creates a kind of calm, especially if you're using carbohydrate. You get a kind of high. And then to spew it all out, the way this therapist put it was, that's how you're channeling your anger. And I just didn't even believe her at the time. But that bulimia, which is so deadly, I don't know how I survived any of these things. The drinking, the smoking, the drugs, the bulimia. I mean, I was sick, sicker than sick. It's really dangerous. And that carried on for many years. It's very secretive. It's another thing that even if you don't have bulimia, binge eaters, I think, probably will identify with. Secrecy of eating, sneaking almost makes, or sneaking a drink or sneaking a cigarette, it almost makes it better, doesn't it?
Hiding the wrapper and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's a power in that. And you don't know that you're greasing that groove of addiction to even that ritual of hiding. So, but I was, again, like many people, multifaceted. I also was interested in health and sports and fitness. And I tried to do both. And I was aware of how hypocritical it was. For instance, I became a personal trainer, but I, often couldn't make it to the client in the morning because I was hungover or I smoked a cigarette. I know they could smell it on me. Or I had that bloat in my face and eyes from bulimia, and I just hated myself. I was filled with self-hatred and low self-esteem. And I carried on, as you do. Um, when I was in my, say, 35th, 36th year of life, I met my late husband, John. He was a customer um, at our business, our family business, because I was still working in that family business. My one job, it supported all my habits and my lifestyle. Uh, and he was clean and sober for about 10 years. And he was going to 12-step meetings next door in a church to our family business. So I understood who these people were and what they were doing. And I was certainly interested and intrigued because I knew that I needed help. And I knew that the addiction had me. I didn't have control of it. All my addictions, between the food and the cigarettes and the drink and all of it. And I was white knuckling my life, quiet desperation, I guess. So he kind of saved my life, because he set an example. And so I've been going into 12-step rooms of all sorts, Dave, for 25 years now. And we use like an expression whereby we say it's attraction, not promotion. And one of your guests put it beautifully when she said, I'd rather be a lighthouse than a foghorn. And that works well with people, doesn't it? We can't tell each other what to do, but we can show others what happened to us. And I was astounded by, you know, the fact that this man who actually at the time was going through a lot of heavy stuff in his life, and he wasn't drinking and he wasn't using drugs. And I couldn't get through a day, without something to medicate, whether it was food or drink or cigarette or drugs, rinse, repeat. So he inspired me. And so I stopped drinking first, Dave. And that was this month, March 22 years ago. And, you know, it's going to sound controversial or I don't know, but you hear other addicts say this. You can stay away from drink. You can stay away from cigarettes. You can stay away from heroin one day at a time, but you have to eat. So if you have an eating disorder or an eating addiction, and I've been to those different rooms, as well, it's trickier, it's trickier. And I'm one of those people who has that dopamine center that lights up, as soon as I take sugar. And I'm also the person, and maybe this is true of a lot of people in addiction, who I will beat myself up immediately. I won't forgive myself, or that was how I was. So therefore, I would just keep going. Well, might as well eat the whole bag of cookies, or the whole cake, whatever it is. So 2 years, 3 years roll on into my sobriety. I stopped smoking. And that was monumental because I always identified as a drinker, as a party girl, as a smoker. This is who I am. Allowed myself to define myself by these things, unwittingly, unknowingly. And that was astounding that I was able to do that. So I'm starting to get healthier, I'm starting to feel better. I'm not using the drugs. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking. I'm almost finished with the bulimia, you know. And maybe what happens next is that morphs into more exercise bulimia. That's a term that we use for people who overdo it, trying to overcompensate, trying to soothe yourself perhaps in some other way, or every time you eat this, remember this fear I have that my mother and father gave me of getting fat. I found great release in exercise, and I still do, but I have to watch that too. I can overdo that. I can injure myself just overdoing it, lifting weights, too much running, whatever it is. So this is a journey. It's a rocky road. And I don't let go of anything, particularly things that are bad for me, without putting claw marks in it. So the other expression we have in the rooms is let go or be dragged. So carnivore is kind of this perfect vehicle, isn't it? In that you can eliminate all these temptations and triggers and yet still get the nutrition that you need, right? because my understanding is your body will seek food until it gets enough protein, possibly. I've heard that. And it will seek food until it gets enough nutrition. And then if you're mindlessly eating, that's some other stuff that, for me personally, I've developed that habit of reaching for things outside of myself to soothe my anxiety, my emotional wants, needs, my past trauma, right? When I was about 10 years into, this recovery, this new way of life, quitting drinking, quitting smoking, quitting the drugs, no more bulimia. John, my husband, my late husband, was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal, untreatable glioblastoma, multiform brain cancer. And all these pictures behind me on this wall, many of them are of John because he had been my savior, my hero, my husband. And oh my God, we were blindsided, completely blindsided. So there we were in New York City. I'm working for myself as a personal trainer, no health insurance. You cannot afford it if you don't work for McDonald's, Starbucks, AXA health insurance, something. You need a big job to have health insurance. And he's working as a real estate agent, no health insurance. We were medically bankrupted immediately, overnight. For instance, 4 days in the hospital and the bill was 100,000 US dollars. And the consultants had their fees as well. So roll on, we decided, okay, we're going to move back to Ireland. John was born and raised in Dublin, which is where I am now. Because he wanted to be with his big family if he only had a couple years to live. That's what he was told. And his friends. He was the youngest of 7, and he had a huge network of friends and family. So we made the best of it that we could. But one of the first things I asked John, being health conscious myself, being a personal trainer, having some awareness, certainly not the awareness I have now, unfortunately. Well, do you think maybe now you'll stop all the sugar, or maybe you'll stop the cigars, because he was a cigar smoker? And he kind of vacillated for a minute, and then he said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do whatever my doctor, who was his brother actually, tells me to do. He decided to go very conventional. He grew up in a medical family. His father was a doctor. His brother was a doctor, etc. And so the treatment changed him immediately. The treatments for cancer, as we all know, and we talk about it a lot in our space, don't we, are horrific. So, but it did extend his life. He would have only had 5 to 6, 7 months without it, I suppose, because his tumor was inoperable. And yeah, we made the best of it for 2 years. And then he died very peacefully in a hospice. I was at his side. I took care of him for 2 years. My life had completely ground to a halt when I came here to Dublin, and I just became his carer. And I had never taken care of anything other than a dog, a cat, a houseplant, So I look at it like it was my crucible, I grew up. It completely rearranged me internally, And I have to say, I probably fell back into some sugar eating and some, binge eating to soothe myself, But I was still exercising. And like I said, I've never really had a weight problem, So roll on, I decided to stay in Dublin. And I decided I wasn't really interested, no offense to anyone, in being a personal trainer for somebody who just wanted to fit into a wedding dress. I wanted something, I had experienced something so meaningful caring for somebody with cancer so close to me. It was so devastating. It was so painful. So I decided to start working with, the elderly, the infirm, and that's what I've been doing, and I love it. But during COVID, you may know that Ireland had one of the most severe lockdowns. So I lost all my work, and I got to thinking, you know, I'm pretty sure I had COVID before we knew what it was, and I was so sick with this flu, I was flattened for 2 weeks straight, and I was moving once again towards a more vegetarian, plant-based diet because it's in the ether, isn't it? You know that this is the way to go, and I had tried all sorts of diets, not to lose weight, just because it was in the air, in the ether. For instance, in my youth, my brother had convinced me to try veganism because that was what he was doing. And I wanted his approval. I look up to my brother, I admire him. So I became a drinking, smoking, cursing vegan for a while. I even gave away my nice leather jacket. I still miss that jacket. But that didn't do it either, you know? Um, anyway, I went to the doctor after that flu and I did blood work and I got this, your cholesterol's too high. It was, I don't know, my total cholesterol was around 4. That's in European numbers, right? Uh, what else was I told? Your thyroid's a little low. Maybe try eating this or not eating that. Otherwise, we're going to put you on Synthroid or, something like synthetic. But it was never, I wonder what the root cause is. Never. So I think I was on YouTube, and I would normally use YouTube for, well, we were in a lockdown. So I would use it for exercise, you know, follow somebody along for weightlifting, Pilates, yoga. And I think I was also curious about maybe my thyroid or my cholesterol. I think I found Dr. Berg first. And I thought, wow, I really wish I had come to YouTube sooner. When I started hearing the things I was hearing about, let me just put it plain, fat is not the enemy. We've all been duped. We've all been lied to. And I thought, well, I always was kind of gullible, naive. I really wish I had researched this sooner. So I got interested. And then the algorithm starts to show you more content like this. And I'll never forget, I think it was Sean Baker had popped up into my feed. And I was kind of, what in the world? Only meat? Like, I loved meat. I loved everything. I was very omnivorous. Just addicted to things that spark dopamine, sugar, carb, refined. And then I found, I think it was Bella, Steak and Butter gal, and she was interviewing Dr. Elizabeth Bright. And this woman was talking about thyroid. And all of a sudden, something rose up in me like, screw this. I'm going to try this. I mean, these conventional doctors I go to, and I'm polite and they're polite, and they just want to put me on medications. And I don't feel well. I have always had terrible digestion, always had IBS, always had gas, always had bloat, and then diarrhea, and then constipation, and rinse, repeat. Always had cramps in my belly. And if I ate, I was getting to this point now because we're talking recently. I'd eat lunch and then I'd fall asleep in my chair. So I know I was going down the wrong road, pre-diabetes, whatever. I just had that sense by looking at some of this stuff online and my own symptoms. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer. I see so much suffering. So I made an appointment, a telemedicine appointment with Dr. Elizabeth Bright. And she immediately, first of all, we spent an hour. You never get that in a doctor's office. She sent me so many forms that I had to fill out first. So many things I had to look at. She wanted pictures of my tongue, Dave, pictures of my hands, pictures of my feet. She made me take my temperature and like all this stuff that you never get. You get 5 minutes with a Western doctor usually, you know? So she immediately suggested total elimination carnivore diet because she is of that, ilk. And I knew this is about a year, at least a year ago. I knew I wasn't ready. So I'm still in transition because, like I said to you, claw marks. So uh, just last week, I let go of chocolate and I was eating really dark, expensive chocolate that's supposed to be healthy and full of polyphenols and antioxidants. But I cannot moderate those foods. So, where people would go, "Ooh, that's too dark," or "Oh, I could only take a bite of that," I could inhale 100 grams, just like that. So I've put that down and I'm coming around finally to full I want to do a full elimination diet. She suggested that. She said, "Why don't you go with ruminant meat, beef, lamb, maybe some butter, because women need plenty of fat." She's of that mind. Water. She wanted me to drink only decaf if I was going to consume any coffee. And I was like, "But what about like the blueberries? Aren't they healthy? What about the organic broccoli?" She was like, "Sure, sure. But if we really want to get to the bottom of what's ailing you, like I have suffered my whole life, Dave, with migraines. But remember, I drank heavily for 38 years. So I always put that down to hangover. But they continued after I got sober. So slowly, painstakingly, I am making my way toward a full elimination diet. Not because I want to have a carnivore card. That's not me, you know, um, because I want to see what is it, what is it, and what does it feel like to wake up with no pain, and no migraine, and this thyroid condition being treated and healed finally because I did so much damage to myself. I honestly don't know how I'm alive with the way I carried on. So, and then uh, perhaps it was Dr. Bright, or together we said, "You live in Ireland. You've got the best beef, the best lamb, the best butter. So you'd be crazy to be a vegan in Ireland." Like, and it's affordable here, Dave. In fact, I just got a delivery yesterday of, I can't buy a lot because see the space I'm in? This is the space I live in. It's one room. Um, I got a delivery of meat I found a regenerative farm up in Donegal, which is north of here by, say, 2 hours. Um, and they do grass fed, grass finished, beef, lamb, and they're just kind of starting up. They're a young family doing this, so it's wonderful to support them. And it's Dexter beef, which is a breed of cattle that is native to Ireland. So that's cool. And it has such a beautiful, different, distinctive taste, texture, smell. I can't even explain it really. And it has spoiled me. So I would buy more because the more you buy, the less expensive the price per kilogram is. But I just have the tiniest fridge and the even tinier freezer. Um, I'd love to buy a proper freezer, but like I said, I live in one room, so that would probably keep me up all night. But anyway, I'm really happy to have found them, to be supporting a local farm. And it is so satisfying. It is so satiating. So I don't seek food like I used to because I'm now getting the nutrition, aren't I? I'm getting the nutrients. I'm getting the fats. I'm even asking them to give me fattier mince, what we call mince, Americans call ground beef, um, and adding fats. And can you send me some offcuts of fats? And do you have, this extra bits? And so I only eat, Dave, twice a day. Sometimes I don't eat until dinner because I'm just too busy, but I'm never hungry. So if I'm hungry, it's not about food, to be honest, anymore.
It's amazing that you can change your style of eating like this and just go through a whole day and focus on what you want to focus on and never feel hungry, right?
It's incredible. Such freedom. And that's what I want. I want more freedom, you know? I want more freedom from illness, pain. For instance, I went and got myself because as we say in carnivore, you know, you suddenly become reborn, supercharged, energized, you know. I went and got myself a barbell. Never mind the dumbbells because I already had those. A barbell, and I injured my shoulder almost instantly, you know, because I just go. I went too hard, too fast with it. So I want to heal, you know, and I know that this is one thing that will certainly help. I'm not saying it's the panacea for everything, but it won't hurt, you know. My understanding, I know it sounds simple, is that sugar is inflammatory, right? And I really have to admit, um, because as an addict, I will try to rationalize, well, it's really dark chocolate, like it's supposed to be healthy.
Yeah. So at this stage, you mentioned you kind of, you know, your clawed on till the very end kind of thing. So what is your eating like at the moment? So it's 2 meals a day or maybe 1 meal a day, but like what's that made up of?
And I always look forward to it. Like you hear this a lot in our space too, you know. I never go, oh, beef and eggs again, poor me. I love eggs. I'm not sure they love me yet. I know that I should probably be avoiding the whites, but I just love eggs any style. So often my first meal, I don't try to fast, and I know my doctor, Dr. Bright, really doesn't suggest fasting for women. But I like to get up and I like to exercise fasted, and I like to exercise first because then I can't procrastinate it, you know. So I'll do some exercise first thing. And so I may actually go out and do some work. So by the time I eat, it might be 11, 12, maybe 1. Like I said, I'm not hungry. I'm eating because I'm looking forward to it. I know it's nutrient dense and I don't want to lose any more weight. I actually lost a little bit of weight on carnivore and I don't need to I never came to carnivore or any diet for weight loss. That wasn't me. It's just sickness, illnesses, symptoms. I need healing, you know. So I will generally have eggs and mince, or eggs and bacon, or I'll do sort of that power bowl everybody talks about: mince and eggs and beef or bacon and butter. And if I take anything other than water to drink, um, I'll drink mineral water, plain water. I'll take a herbal tea. And the one thing I'm still hanging on to, two things I'm still hanging on to, but I know full elimination is sort of my goal, at least temporarily, are stevia drops and dairy. So I still put some double cream in my tea if I have it. And I still eat, because it's so good and I love it, very aged raw milk cheeses. I still eat those. But I will have them as now, since I'm not doing the chocolate, I will have that as my dessert, a little bit of cheese. Um, I do eat also, I always try to eat all my food at one time and not graze, because I was for so many years growing up in the restaurant business, the retail business, grazing, you know, and that's also probably not great for us, right? Insulin wise. Um, and then my dinner is usually early, 5, 6 o'clock. You know, I really try to be finished eating by 7 o'clock, 6, 7 o'clock, so that I can digest and not have any kind of reflux, you know. And I'll usually have steak or lamb, you know, beef, lamb. I rarely eat chicken anymore. I recently tried some duck and it didn't agree with me. It was gorgeous. It tasted so good. It was so fatty, but it didn't agree with me. I woke up kind of in pain almost. And I'm the
It's
one who would say to you, none of this is true. Come on. That can't be true that you would feel chicken or pork, but you do.
yeah. I find it interesting that most of the people that I talk to, um, once they've been on carnivore for any length of time, most people kind of see chicken as this kind of, meh,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. Yeah, and I include myself in that, although it's not carnivore for me. I've always been like that about chicken. It's always kind of been this thing that I'm like, "There's not much taste." Yeah.
White meat or breast meat.
Yeah, and I think for me, that was the problem because I've never been into fatty chicken or chicken skin or anything like that, so for me, it was always I'd just eat the breast meat, and yeah, that's the driest part you could be eating, you know? Um, so for the time that you've been doing carnivore, yeah, I mean, as you say, you're still kind of trying to knock a few things out, but in the time that you have been doing it and you've been eating this ruminant meat and, you've been eating your eggs and stuff, what changes have you noticed? Has there been any healing, any changes in the pain you're experiencing?
Huge. Wow. If you've got a few minutes. Um, I always had very dry eyes and I was always using drops in them. And I'm thinking if I really was possibly pre-diabetic, that's probably one of the symptoms. I would eat and fall asleep. Like that's definitely a sign that something's not good with your blood sugar. You know, I feel my vision has improved. But speaking of eyes, oxalates. Okay, I was so addicted to peanut butter and almond butter. Those were things that I binged on. I could eat a jar. Now, I'd buy the best, Dave. It would be the organic. There's no sugar added. There's no extra seed oil or anything in there. I'd eat the whole jar. Like I could not moderate it. It was so good. So it was peanut butter and almond butter. And those actually now I know are pretty unhealthy. You think of those as health foods. Actually, they're not, especially not in that amount. So I cut it out 100%. In the last year, I had this situation where my right eye, was tearing constantly, Dave, for months. I even went to vision doctors and asked them, "Can you see anything in there?" And they were like, "Well, it looks a little irritated, but no, you're probably just dry, and that's why you're tearing. Take some drops." But I mean, the whole underneath my eye even was all swollen and kind of the skin was hanging down. It was the scariest thing. I thought maybe I've got cancer in my eye. And then it stopped. And then if you read like Sally K. Norton or listen to certain people, I think I was dumping oxalates out of that eye because nobody, I mean, I should have had stock in these peanut butter and almond butter companies. Nobody consumed more than me. And then I stopped it cold turkey. So I think I was dumping it. Then we talk about what happens with your mouth. My gums stopped bleeding. My bad breath went away. My tongue, because I became very aware of my tongue through Elizabeth Bright asking me to, pay attention to it. My tongue like kind of shrunk and got younger and pinker and healthier. But recently, I think I dumped more oxalate out of my bottom teeth. Now, I know this sounds insane, but something came out like a crystal of my bottom teeth. It was the strangest thing. I could feel it with my tongue, and then eventually it was like I could get it out, and it was gone. So bizarre. I think that was oxalate, and I feel like I've also pushed them out of my skin too. I know that sounds so crazy, so crazy. Um, so I don't have all that acid in the transition. I felt that acid, you know, kind of reflux, that kind of thing. So I did use some enzymes to help me digest. I was terrified of taking all that fat at first because of the conditioning we've all gotten. I honestly think this is going to sound graphic, sorry, that I pushed gallstones out through my stool because I could see them in my stool. I'm so grateful that my gallbladder didn't crap out on me, so to speak. But I saw stuff in my stool that I've only ever seen in imagery online as gallstones. I saw it. I don't get sore after exercise, which is how I probably injured myself. I used to always get sore for a day or two. Oh, that was a great workout. I can really feel it. Don't get that. I used to have to go to the bathroom. I was incontinent. That's all my life, I think, from starting with sugar, and I don't have that. I only have to get up maybe once now during the night, maybe not. But I was running to a bathroom no matter what time of day it was, every hour and a half, 2 hours. So that's gone. I don't feel so cold all the time because I've been taking a protocol that Dr. Elizabeth Bright gave me to treat the thyroid. All my life I've had that coldness, particularly in my hands and feet. I always felt cold when everybody else was walking around in
Well,
t-shirts.
that would even be like on a hot summer's day, you'd still feel quite cold.
Well, no, but if you touched my hand, it would be cold. My extremities would
Okay.
always be cold. Yeah. I never seem to get sick anymore. I don't want to jinx it, but everybody gets colds, flus. I just, nope, it's not happening. It's great. I'm much calmer. I'm so much calmer because I've always been prone to anxiety. The only time I went into a depression, which is completely understandable, was during my husband's illness. I fell into a deep depression. Completely understandable. But otherwise, I've always been anxious. And I'm so much calmer. I'm just happier. I'm even going to go as far as say that my suicidality is going, because after John died, I became quite suicidal. And I spoke about it, I spoke to professionals about it. I had a therapist, somebody who deals with cancer, death, and grieving. I spoke about it in all those rooms because I still go into 12-step rooms. So I told on myself. But I really wanted to end my life, understandably. And I don't feel that way as much. But I think there's other things we have to do, somebody like me, other than just carnivore. So I've still got a bit of tinnitus in my right ear. And I'm hoping, again, my goal is total elimination, at least for a time, to see if I can heal that. I still get the occasional migraine, and I don't ever really know what the trigger is. But what have I got to lose to do sort of like a Michaela Peterson on this and just try to go strict and see, but I'm going to have to do it for a day at a time, a minute at a time, for a period of time to see, is this related to my migraines? So like Elizabeth Bright would have said to me, you want to try to remove all the irritants and the stimulants. So even a cup of tea or decaf coffee or blueberries or spices on your meat, you don't know, these can be stimulants. So then I went and got some more bloods, and guess what? My cholesterol was through the roof. And the doctors freaked out, Dave. I mean, I was more worried about them having a heart attack at that moment when they saw my results, I guess I should have prepared them or something. So I think it was November 2023, just gone. Most recently, my total cholesterol was like 12 in European PMOL.
So they were worried about the 4 before, and now they're all hanging around having heart attacks because you got a 12 cholesterol.
Yeah, I'd say my LDL
Wow.
is a very high and healthy, like 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
So they wanted to put me
but
on a statin.
to go back to what you were talking about before, like they're just handing out the drugs, or you only get like 4 minutes or something. It's crazy that it's like, oh, look how high your numbers are. Here's a statin. Not like, look how high your numbers are. Let's work out what's wrong
Yep.
or work out what the problem is. It's like statin straight away.
Yeah.
It's they just don't care.
The cognitive dissonance is real. Toe that party line. It's real. So I said, okay, because they were so freaked out, Dave, this group of doctors. I said, why don't you send me to a cardiologist and we'll take a look under the proverbial hood. So I had the CAC and I had the CTCA, the whole thing. And they did find plaque, and my calcium score was 64, something like that. And I remember thinking, "Whew, it should have been so much worse considering the way I lived my life." I was pleased. Now, I know I'm no professional, not a doctor, not a scientist, and I don't mean to be flip and make light of any of this, but I remember the doctor saying to me afterwards, the cardiologist, well, please, I'm giving you, here's your prescription. Like, I have to, like, standard of care, I have to offer you this. He wanted me to take a statin, say 20 milligrams every day. And I think I took the piece of paper from him or whatever it was and said, I'm probably not going to fill this, right? In fact, I said to him, I'm probably going to be going deeper into carnivore, because my little minuscule understanding is that what would create disease in my blood vessels, to be in general all over my body, would be things like stress, processed food, seed oils, perhaps, sugar, highly processed carbohydrate, lack of sunlight,
smoking and all.
Yeah. I don't think that this. I think by then he understood that I understood that this diet heart hypothesis, it's not flying anymore. By the way, I have a friend who had a heart attack recently and survived it, thankfully. Their cholesterol was much lower than mine.
Yeah, it's there's way more to this than just, oh, your cholesterol's high. There's way more to it than that, right?
Yeah, so many other factors. Yeah. So, and I don't discount the other treatments that are, or the other protocols or the other life hacks that I like to use. Like when I wake up in the morning feeling refreshed because I'm eating this way, I often step outside right away and put my feet on stone and grass, which I happen to have in my front driveway garden, and look up to find some sun to get it in my eyes. These are things I'm learning, right, from being in this space. I'll do that. I will do some exercise, even if it's just some foam rolling or stretching or something first thing. I use red light therapy. I use infrared sauna, tapping, things like, tapping. Just all these other, I'm trying to add all those other things into the mix, exercise and lifting weights and walking. I do a lot of walking. I try to do some sprints. However, my sprint would not look like a sprint anymore, at my age.
If someone's watching now and they want to get started with this, how would you recommend they get started?
Yeah. I think best practice is to go slow. I know there are people who just dive in and rip the Band-Aid off, and they may be like me. They may be an addict, or should we say an abstainer, and that would work best. But I was already pretty low carb when I stepped into more keto and carnivore. And I got the side effects of leg cramps, some acid reflux, some sleeplessness, some of the transition is difficult. I've never had diarrhea. I'm so blessed, but my constipation is gone because I've upped the fat. People with hypothyroid often have constipation. I often had that. Um, yeah, be gentle on yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you fail, if you fall, fail again, try again. You fall forward, you know, um, gently. And as you will
Yeah.
often say, one day at a time. That's something I've
Mm.
heard for 25 years. I love it when you talk about that, Dave, and it's so encouraging. You've been such an inspiration. I always feel lately like you're talking right to me when you say things like, it's just today, and then roll on, it'll be another day. And maybe you get a week, take it a minute at a time. Uh, Try to eliminate the big offenders. Like, even if you just ate whole food, and cut out anything that's in a box, a bag, has a barcode on it, cut that stuff out. There's a guy in our space, Life Like Jake. He says if you can pluck it, kill it, pull it from the ground, then it's probably okay. Whole food, right? It doesn't have to be grass fed, right? It doesn't have to be grass finished. Because I still do eat some like salamis and chorizo and mortadella and braciola and all these gorgeous cheeses because I grew up with that stuff. And now I'm living in Europe. I can get it so easily and so affordably. And those are my treats now while I'm still transitioning. Isn't it Dr. Berg himself who said, anything, yeah, he's very sarcastic sometimes. Anything your doctor tells you, yeah, you should probably do the opposite.
Sadly, that's becoming more and more like good advice, right? I think when I was a kid, it was probably a bit different. Like doctors actually cared, they actually asked questions, but it just doesn't seem that way anymore.
I think they're held hostage to a system that is, grinding ever faster. And when we say big pharma, big food, big ag, any of these things, the common word there is big. They've all been swallowed up by huge corporations, and it's just a
Yeah.
system that's rolling so
And
fast.
their goal is just to satisfy shareholders, really, right?
I see that in
Yeah.
the institutions that I work in, Dave. Um, the nursing homes, for instance, that would have been owned by families are now all being acquired by these offshore kind of, I think, equity companies, real estate companies. And I see things are changing. It's not good. And you couldn't believe what they feed them, Dave.
See, that's the being acquired like that, that's the trouble. Then there's just zero human touch anywhere, right? And anyone that's on the ground working for these companies, they have so many KPIs and goals and all that just to be able to keep their job. They can't afford to have a human touch either.
Scary, isn't it? So I think it's fantastic that this carnivore movement seems to be spreading and rising because perhaps this is the real answer to climate change, quote unquote, climate crisis, quote unquote, that we go back to what our ancestors did, with regenerative agriculture rather than monocropping, right? And
Mm.
perhaps all the vegans will come over to our way of thinking because maybe they'll realize that, like, they too were sold a bill of goods. You know,
Yeah, well, it happens. It happens quite often. There are vegans that do come over and go carnivore.
I've
I
been
haven't.
vegan. Yeah.
I'm yet to hear of a carnivore that goes vegan.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. True.
Mia, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate your time.
Such a pleasure to meet you, Dave. Thank you for all you're doing, really helping people. Thank you.